Alright guys, welcome to another episode of Tinkering Timmy's. Today, we're back on the 80 series here, and we're going to be installing, yeah, you guessed it, PDI front mount intercooler. So for a few months now I've been and ahhing and undecided whether to go top mount or front mount. Pros and cons for both. Top mount's probably a bit easier to fit, although you do have to cut the hole in your bonnet, so you're sort of committed to that setup with that hole in the bonnet. Yeah, a bit quicker to set up, lot less piping, lot less hoses. Arguably not as efficient though, because it's on top of your hot motor. And if you're anything like me, with the 80 or even your 70 series and that, with the 1HZ motors, even 105 series, when it rains, water's on the bonnet, the water doesn't beat off until you get to like 80-90 Ks. So to me that says that there's not a great deal of airflow flowing over those bonnets. Some of the openings are only about this big. I was going to the effort of installing one, and I wanted to work properly. I was monitoring my temperatures beforehand just in the crossover pipe on the 1HZ. I had an intake temp sensor fitted in there, and yeah, I'd see temps up to 130 degrees intake temps there at full boost, running about 12 pound, fully loaded with the Caravan 2.5-10 Caravan behind the 80 here up hills. So I've sort of got some notes on where my intake temps were prior to this setup, and I've got a sensor fitted, or I've got a bung welded in to close to the new intake pipe that PDI supply. So that should tell me exactly the difference between the setup beforehand, which is non-intercooled, and this setup. So it's going to be very interesting. PDI makes some pretty big claims that how low it will drop on a heavily modified 1HZ, 1HD motor, or 1HD TFTE as well. I've just got a 1HZ just with a CT26 turbo on it, dyno tuned to lean AFR, so I can tow the Caravan nicely. It works really well, but I am monitoring temps a lot, especially on those hot days towing up hills. I am watching my gauges a lot, and I've got gauges fitted to oil temp, water temp, air intake temp, oil pressure, boost pressure, and EGT. So I'm watching all those gauges. So I'm hoping this setup here with this will just ease my mind a little bit and drastically drop those intake temperatures, which will take a load off my water temp hopefully, and hopefully lower the oil temp too, because the turbo should be cooler, because it should see cooler EGTs. So PDI intercooler. Why I went for PDI? This is the biggest core I could find, and the pipe work is so neat. It fits in under the battery trays on the factory 80 and behind the front indicator apron. Now I have seen that it is a bit of a pickle to get these holes in the right spot, but hopefully I'm going to get them in the right spot, and I'll show you where I put them, so maybe it'll help you. So first off, I'll break down the kit, we'll have a look inside, and I'll talk through the pipe work and hoses and that, and then we're going to get straight into it and start fitting it. So here's the kit, guys. So first off, here's all my stainless mandrel bent, a couple of welds in there, pipe work. So that'd be the passenger side by the looks of it. Comes out the front apron there up to timing case cover. This one will be the driver's side, front apron, and up to near the airbox. This one's over the turbo, over the airbox, like that I'd say, over to the rocker cover. Inlet manifold to front of the engine, inlet manifold adapter. I've also got a new gasket to go on with that. That doesn't come in the kit, by the way, the gasket. I just bought one from Terrain Tamer. All your silicone joins, array of hose clamps, pinch weld for the holes that you got to cut. That'll be for the intake adapter, I guess. So you can cut that and adapt that to your boost sensor or your boost compensated fuel pump. Clamps, new bracket for the bonnet catch, intercooler support. There's a couple more brackets in here as well. And here is the money maker. Look at that. Everything was beautifully packaged. No damage in freight. A couple of stickers for good measure. They'll go on the 80 for sure. It also comes with comprehensive instructions in the kit that will talk you the whole way through. The only things you need that's not in the kit is, as I mentioned before, I also grabbed a crossover pipe gasket that goes onto the intake manifold just for good measure. They're a couple of bucks, so I grabbed one of them that's not in the kit. Some paint to touch up the holes that you cut in the front apron. Socket sets, spanners, screwdrivers, stuff like that to remove all the front headlights and all that gear. Most of it you can get away with a 1/4" drive, 3/8 drive and a Phillips head screwdriver. This kit calls for a 3-inch hole saw. I've got one that's a bit bigger. It's up to about 85, 86 mil. It's about 10 mil bigger than what they call for. I've seen on a few forums and that if people don't get the holes in the right spot, they have trouble fitting the indicators and that over the pipes that come from the intercooler into the apron. So I'm just going to knock out the hole a little bit bigger, because I've seen guys have to elongate them and that. So I'm just going to go that next step up, get it a bit bigger, put the pinch weld on it, or paint it, put the pinch weld on it, and hopefully it all lines up and looks good. So first up, you're going to remove your headlights, grille, and your batteries. Yeah, and your battery boxes, because your pipes go underneath through the apron there, underneath your battery boxes, and over to the rocker cover onto the turbo, through the apron there, under the battery box, under this front radiator hose. So the kit calls for to remove that hose, and up over into your intake. I'm doing this as a part of quite a big service on the car here. I've just done my valve clearances, timing belt, water pump, and a new radiator. So I thought it'd be perfect time to fit the kit, because to get the radiator and the shroud and everything off on these 80s, you've got to take the battery boxes out. So perfect timing. I'm doing it all in one hit while everything's apart. I'm going to clean everything up on the way, because there's a lot of stuff I've been on the back burner to do. And then you've also got to take off your front metal apron here. So you've got some bolts here, you've got these bolts down there, there's a bolt that holds it onto your bonnet catch, and these ones here. Pop all them out, and this bit will come out pretty quickly. It's also a matter of removing the bonnet catch, and you put in that new piece. The horn mount comes off, because you've got to put in some new brackets to mount the intercooler, and the intercooler should sit nicely just in there. You've got to cut off a couple of these mounts. I think you've got to cut off this one, and these little tabs here, I think they foul, so we're going to knock them off as well with the grinder and touch them up while it's off. So also on the passenger side, you've got your brake lines that come down here. There's a clamp in behind the battery where the battery box is here, one bolt. There's one down on the chassis down the bottom there. You've got to bend these out of the way slightly back and down, I believe. I've only undone it, I haven't bent it yet. I'm going to do that once I start getting the pipe work in and how far I've got to move everything. And also bracket for the aircon here, I'll just remove that. The pipe, I believe, runs down and under this, so you're just going to have to wiggle this a bit, maybe bend it up a touch just to get that pipe in, because the pipe will go in down through there. So I'll just remove that bracket to give me plenty of space in here. So I'm going to go ahead now and remove all these other little associated brackets that I haven't done yet, and get this front apron, the blinker apron off, and that's the room you should have to work in. So you don't need to remove the bull bar to drill these holes. The holes are going to go in here, so it'll be tight, but I'll be able to get in just once now that bottom apron's removed. There's a bit more room. I'm also lucky enough, my 80's the early 80s, so my receiver dryer for the aircon's not down here like some are. Mine's up tucked in behind the battery box. So the instructions also state, if you do have that dryer, you will have to bend those pipe pokes out. You have enough room for the silicone joiner to pop in. Alright, so this is pretty much what you should see. There's the main bracket in the back there, there's a bolt in behind here, and there's a bolt down on the bottom radiator support. And then these brackets, there's a small one for the bonnet stay, bonnet catch, and one for the horn mount. I've taken the horns off, so I've got plenty of room to get in here and work, but Yeah, so far so good. Everything's just sort of nipped up, not overly tight, because I've still, I haven't got the bottom ones in, just to get, it says in the manual to leave the bottom ones out, because you just have to sort of pivot the intercooler out as you get these bottom hoses on. So now I'm going to get in there and mark out where I'm throwing these holes. Yeah, the book's got a pretty good overview with good instructions. It says the middle of the square pressed, and it also states if you put them 5mm lower than what they've got here, it should clear your indicators. So I'm going to follow that. Alright, so first hole's marked. That's the center of the hole saw there. So I've gone with the center of this pressed square, and then slightly below there's like a double, like a rib here. It flattens out to down here. So I've sort of gone, 5 or so mil below that, and yeah, center of the pressed steel. Now I'm gonna smash it out. So this is the passenger side hole. Same thing, you got the square rib here. Mark center line of the rib. It's about 90mm, so about 45mm. And then in the manual, the book, there's a press bit that sort of comes here. In the book, it's sort of the drill's about here. So I'm going 5mm lower, like they say, but I'm also using that bigger hole saw, like I've said, so that should give me plenty of room. So let's get this one out. Now I've got the holes cut in the front. I'm just going to go along and start sitting my pipework in place on the driver's side here, and also as I'm fitting it, I'm going to be pushing those brake lines back and bending them back a bit to give it a bit of space in front of the radiator here and up to the timing case. Alright, so now I've got both of them sort of sitting in roughly where they're going to go. This one's obviously got to come down and out. Yeah, that one's sitting in there. Got some good clearance on those brake lines now. They had to bend back a fair bit actually. There's a tab on the bottom of this bracket that goes into the chassis that needs to be flattened out. Well, I had to flatten mine out to get enough to bend that, because it's got to sort of, the whole bracket, it sort of sits parallel or square to the chassis. It's sort of got to just go back, and that tab's holding it from doing that. So just bend that out, and you just got to massage them. As you can see, once this is sitting in there with the silicone and that, I'm going to go along and persuade them to move a little bit more. But that's 90% there. So now I've got to grab the silicones, 90-degree bend, one short, one long, and trim these to fit where it's going to sit. So as you can see, they're long, which is good. So yeah, I'm just going to start trimming these up. I don't think I've got to take anything off that end. I think it's more just this end. So I'll mark them up, and I'll show you a quick tip on how to cut the silicone so you get a nice clean join as close to the factory join as we can, and not muck it up. So to cut these silicone hoses, guys, main thing is brand new Stanley blade, brand new one. Lock her up. Now what I like to do is just get the hose clamps you're going to be using, or a clamp from the shed, and clamp it over it firmly. Now I've probably got it a bit too firm here because I'm only using an offcut, but firmly. You don't want to deform the pipe too much, which I have a little bit here, but that's because it's an offcut. If you're using like your pop hose, it's a bit more rigid, and yeah, you don't have to do them up too tight, but nice and firm so it doesn't move. So what I like to do is I start from the worm drive end, because they're a bit wider, so you sort of got to relocate it a little bit. So I start from there, just score it until you want your blade to go through. And once it's through, you just like you're cutting a tomato with a very sharp knife. You're not hacking at it like a hacksaw. You're just pushing down with firm pressure and just in and out. Just like that. So firm pressure, in and out until you go all the way around. We go all the way to the worm drive. So you can take the worm drive off, or if you want to get it as good as you can just relocate your clamp so the worm drive part's not in the way. Line it up to the band of the clamp like that. Nip her up again. Now again, it's a lot easier on a full hose. This is just a little off cut. And start again. That's it. Easy as that. So that's what I've been doing, going along and doing to all the PDI hoses. Look at that. It's pretty damn good. Now you can go along and trim the little edges where you sort of start and finish, but I've had no issues fitting them. And I've just been going along taking 10 mil off and then just a couple of mil just to get it perfect. And what I've found is those ones at the front with the 90-degree elbow going from the intercooler into the apron, one long end, one short end, it is super critical where they sit to make it so much easier for relief between the AC hose on the driver's side and the brake lines on the passenger side. Getting them, I must have cut them and fitted them about half a dozen to a dozen times just to get them spot on, taking a little bit at a time just to get it exactly where I wanted it to make it easier on the inside of the engine bay for the relief and everything. And I'll run you over all that. So this is where I got it to. I'm happy with how all the pipes are laying now. There's clearance on everything. The only thing I couldn't get clearance on is this AC pipe just in there, because if I pulled it in more I'd hit my airbox. So it's just that bit there, but I'll go and get some like insulating foam, because you can just sit it like that. So I'll just get some insulating foam in there. That should be sweet. It comes down here nicely at the front, in the cooler. This is the passenger side. Just pokes in there nicely. There's clearance on the brake lines and vacuum hoses. It comes up on the inside of this radiator hose. Clearance on there. Clearance on the timing case. It's all just like so close. And that's me intake temp sensor, so I'll be monitoring exactly how she's going. Straight into the intake manifold. So now I'm just going to go and bolt in the headlights and get all the grill back in together, and hopefully my indicators sit in over these pipes, so we'll see how that all looks. Alright guys, so I've got the indicators sitting in there. Unfortunately, well, on the driver's side I got it good. That's sitting in there like that, and there's clearance. I just got to clean up that wiring there, because it's bridged from there down into the bull bar, so I'm just going to clean that up to give it a bit more space so the wires aren't rubbing. But on the passenger side, it's yeah, sitting up like that, rubbing against the pipe there, which I'm a bit bummed about. That's what you're looking at, so it's always going to hit there, isn't it? I don't know how much lower I could go with the hole. Like, if I went any lower, I'd be hitting, my radiator mount in there. So it is what it is, and this is what I end up doing. I end up just cutting and shutting it a bit, just to get it in there, just to make sure everything's working, and I'm not going to get pulled over or anything. So just got to sit in like that for now. But I'm going to put something else in. I'll bring it up on the screen. I'm thinking of putting these lights in, and I reckon if I cut it along the back here, just where these ribs are, I should be able to glue them and pop rivet them and something on there, and that'll be nice and sleek and low profile and be out of the way of that. But for now, just cut that. Once it's in there, I just have to bend it down a little bit, and it's the same, even though it was good on the driver's side, just to give it that bit more clearance. I've had to bend it anyway, so it's sort of sitting a little bit out. So I'll do the same on this side. I'll just get two of them and do the same on this side. Happy with the install now, with everything just sitting in there nicely. All my clamps are tight. For now, I'll go over and double check them in a couple of weeks or so after I get some temperature in them and some boost running through it. But yeah, everything's sitting in there nicely. I had to trim a bit of the grill, the bit where it goes into the old bonnet catch, up the top and down the bottom. I had to knock them off. There was just resting on there, and the bottom one was hitting. Not going to use them anyway because that bonnet catch is now gone, so they're knocked off with just a multi-tool. And just down the bottom there, I just had to relieve the grill just right down the bottom, so there's plenty of room and that won't hit. I just didn't need to. It was only a mil off, so I just knocked a bit more off just to give me a bit of peace of mind over corrugations and that. But that's all sitting there nicely, happy with that. As I said, those indicators are sitting a bit proud, but I'm going to do a mod on them anyway. I was sort of expecting that anyway, part of the kit. I've seen a lot of people have issues with them. It is what it is. You're running big pipework in through there, and there's not a lot of room as it is, so just one of those things. But I'll make it better. I'll put some LEDs in there, and yeah, it should be better than the old halogen globes that rust in the connector and pain in the backside to change. So that's it. So now I'm just gonna start her up and take her for a drive and make sure there's no boost leaks and everything's behaving normally. Alright guys, got just in the car driving along, making sure everything's operating properly, running some boost through it, make sure no odd sounds or anything happening. Pretty happy with how it's all looking so far. Got her up to operating temp. So now I'm just cruising about 80 k's. We're sitting on about 8 psi of boost. Now normally I'd be seeing about anywhere from about 70 to 90 degree intake temps, and I'm currently sitting at 30. It's probably about a 25 degree day out there at the moment, and I'm seeing 30 degree intake temps on the cold side. So that is knocking off at least 40 to 50 degrees at least. That's just cruising though. It's not sustained heavy load. Like my boost now is dropped down to about 4. So, but even so, I'd normally see about 10 degrees per pound of boost. So I'm sitting at 4 pound, 5 pound now, and an air intake temp is just sitting nicely at 30, 28 now. So I can't be happy with that. So the big test will be when I hook up the van and get her uphill under heavy load. So I'll wait a couple of weeks to do a full review on it. This is just the end of the install. So far so good. I'm very happy. I will see you guys at the next one.